Okay, please can we start with a little bit of background on Sequana? When, why formed, key milestones to date, personnel. Yeah, just give us some background.
Certainly, Phil. Interesting journey for Frank and I. We started the business in 2019, so not so long ago. We started when we saw a gap in the Australian water market where we could provide, I suppose, an integrated water solution to water corporations and governments that tied together not only strategy but commercial and technical know-how into this one offering to deliver certainly infrastructure and other assets in the water industry. Frank and I had worked together for a number of years. We started in 2008 on probably the largest desalination project in the Southern Hemisphere at the time, 450 million litres a day desalination plant. Frank was the executive director for government and I was the engineering director. And out of that came an association where we built other infrastructure for government, large irrigation modernisation infrastructure. A lot of the work we did was around water security and saving water or providing water that didn't require rain, so rain independent sources. So that's a little bit, but Frank, over to you. I'm sure there's something I've missed there.
Yeah, look, obviously the background is we saw that gap in the market in Australia, that you have your engineering service providers, you have your big fours that provide commercial services, you have your law firms, and we realized there's always this a gap between what people accept as their risk and there's finger pointing if things go wrong. And so we really deliver this as an end-to-end service to our clients, have all those dimensions of project management that are sort of totally relevant for every single project in one, including communication and engagement. It was a service that actually doesn't really exist in Australia, and it's born out of the need for projects have become a lot more complex. Our clients here, as in the UK, are not saying any longer, the engineering is solving the problems. Social license is a key thing you need to have for projects. And we have our in-house team of communication and engagement specialists helping with those sort of matters. Yeah, it's sort of born out of a need and a gap in the market.
Okay, and in terms of, we got, as you talked there, both of you got some idea, I guess, of what it is you do, but perhaps you can give us just a bit of a flavour of some of the work you've undertaken or you're undertaking at the moment. You mentioned obviously desalination, and as a result, the sort of reputation you've built. And are we talking just in Australia at the moment, or do you work further afield already? And then obviously after that, we'll come on to the UK angle.
Do you want to go, Frank, and then I go? You go.
Absolutely. No, thanks for that. Look, we have been involved in every single landmark desal project in Australia, and Mike will also talk about the range of our international expertise. We have done, which are all multi-billion Australian dollar projects, largely because they are that large, but also involved in smaller scale projects. Have been involved in the largest recycled water and irrigation scheme modernization. There's thousands of kilometers of channel providing water to farmers, and that all needed to be modernized because the channel system is very, very leaky. And that water is saved and is now retained in the river system because river health in the Millennium Drought in Australia was a huge issue that was overcome through really saving water that has gone to farmers, but was really wasted in those channels with modern smart meters and totally new technologies, obviously including pipelining, things like that. And I'd say we are in Australia recognized for technical leadership, but generally project and program leadership and turning around highly challenging projects that haven't delivered to expectation. So we have been brought in to assist with those, to turn a project in very difficult circumstances. We turn these projects around to deliver them on budget and on time, multiple times successfully. And Mike, you might want to talk a little bit more about the expertise, probably overseas, and any other things you want to add to this.
Yeah, I just to expand firstly on what Frank said about these troublesome projects. These are distressed projects, Phil, and what we've had a reputation to do is be the go-to people to fix projects that weren't working. They were costing the public, essentially, the customers, money because they weren't being delivered on time and achieving the targets they were meant to. Other offerings that come into, Frank mentioned desal and recycled water, end-to-end services from think about feasibility work and planning right through to operations. So, now we have around 200 people that are involved in all phases of not only capital projects, but price reviews, for instance, for government approval, which in the UK you go through. You've got to get an approval on your pricing, and that's a problematic area for Australia and the UK because in both countries there's been a massive under expenditure in assets. And that's just coming home to roost in Australia and the UK. So there's great challenges. So we get involved in all that, business cases, etc. On the international front, there's a number of us that have worked in the US, in the UK, Europe, as in France, and Southeast Asia particularly, which has its own issues around not only water, but sanitation. So we bring together quite a mix of experience, young and a lot of experienced people that come out of international water companies.
Okay, and then obviously one of the main reasons for having today's conversation is the fact that you are opening up an office in the UK. So just be good to understand, why now? What's the thinking behind the decision to do that?
Frank, or?
Absolutely. Obviously, it's a much bigger market for us than the Australian market. It's historic underinvestment in water infrastructure, which is probably not too dissimilar, Mike, than what we have encountered in Australia 20, 25 years ago. Climate change impacts were massive already with millennium drought. And then suddenly a lot of changes happened over a very short period of time. Record investment had to happen, policy changes had to happen, because suddenly there was this urgent need and the urgency that happened at that time. Clearly, there are these very similar points that the UK is now in. We really looked through on a global scale, what is an interesting market for us? Where can we pass on our lessons learned of the whole team? And the UK was clearly identified as the prime market for us. And this will be for us a stepping stone into Europe. And our base for Europe is now the UK market. And a lot of desalination projects, you might be aware, are in planning at the moment in the UK. Again, with our skill sets we bring of the whole team, we clearly can add a lot of value from our perspective to those projects. And Mike, you might want to add other things.
Yeah, I think when we look, Phil, at the declared drought areas in at least 5 or 6 areas in the UK, north, east, south, you only have to look at Yorkshire Water, Southern, Southeast Water, etc. Anglian are making plans for recycled water and desal. And as Frank said, there's at least 9 rain-independent desalination plants in the pipeline to be considered before 2040, 2050. Some of these may have to be brought forward. That's exactly what happened in Australia. And what we got very good at in Australia was adaptive planning. That planning where you can pivot, you do enough planning where you can pivot on an opportunity to either, in the case of some of your water companies, build reservoirs, but also look at recycled water or desalination as a way of providing water security. And we believe from what we did with the hard yards over 10, 15 years, there's so many lessons learned, as Frank said, to bring to provide advice to water companies, to assist as, a critical friend, if you will, is, you know, where we see, and English speaking and common law, all those things that, and cricket and rugby, you know, those things, you know, and having worked in the UK, we believe there's, you know, probably the best starting point internationally for us is the UK. It's such a big market. It's 20 times as big as the Australian water sector. You know, ours is 10 billion per year, Australian dollars. It's about 20 times that. And great opportunity to assist in those areas.
Okay. I mean, I was going to go on and ask about you sort of quantifying UK's water scarcity challenges and also comparing with Australia, but you've kind of done that. So maybe if you want to say more about that, but also in terms of the way to address it, I guess there needs to be a combination of technology, innovation for the UK. Desal's fairly new for us, I guess, but also changing mindset and behaviours. And I'm just wondering whether you think, you know, from looking outside in, the UK is still a bit in denial that we have the, you know, because, you know, it's the cliche that it rains all the time in the UK, so we're never short of water. That obviously we know that's different, but do you think there needs to be a change in mindset to accept that, and therefore everything else will follow? And until we do that, people will always resent the fact they've got to spend lots on desal or building holes in the ground, you know, reservoirs, etc. Just I suppose your thoughts of comparing, contrasting the two markets and where you think the UK is, if that makes sense.
Frank, did you want me to go first or you?
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be great. And I just add.
Yeah, I think you really nailed that, Phil. I think, you know, there's a perception, no doubt, there that you've never needed it. You could use your hose pipes and sprinklers, although now many hose pipe and sprinkler bans have been put in place, and through summer. So there's a slow change in understanding, but I think that the policy and the education process really would benefit from a step change from where it is now, from what we see, because we've seen it come on so quickly in Australia that, you know, what we've seen is governments grappling to deal with the fact that they may have to find a quick way to solve a water scarcity issue. And the interesting thing is, Phil, to build anything new, and I'm sure it's very similar in the UK, given environmental and regulatory approvals required, it can take 8 to 10 years from feasibility to operation of a new water asset that's very complex to be integrated into the system. So what the punter doesn't and won't know is long-term planning is essential to provide confidence to the public. And they need to understand it's not just a matter of turning on a tap and it'll always be there. And that's always been the case in the UK and Europe, but not so now. Frank?
Oh, no, totally. Look, the main thing from our perspective, the cost of doing nothing is rising faster than CapEx. If you don't invest now, and this is obviously where Australia was like obviously 25 years ago. And one of those things was that in Australia, you obviously have the different states. Some states had already 3 step changes, i.e. anything in WA in Western Australia. Western Australia is planning to build another 5 to 10 desalination projects just alone, creating almost like a network. It is already highly dependent purely on the supply of desalination. Whereas in other states, you have this issue that there's a drought for 10 years and then it rains a lot. So people say, why would we invest into another asset here? But obviously climate variability is very, very strong. You need to plan ahead. And one of those things which we brought really, Mike, to our project is adaptive planning. So you develop specific trigger points. We are not saying always the solution is infrastructure. Sometimes the solution is not infrastructure. It might be policy changes, but that's what our business does. We really help people to guide through the complexity of making a big decision. We understand not everybody wants to spend billions of dollars or pounds in massive infrastructure. But then, as Mike pointed out, if a project takes 8 to 10 years, let's do the upfront planning, which is not as costly. Get a project ready. So once the trigger point hits, you develop that project and you build the project. So this being nimble and always in a state of readiness is for us a key point, which I have stolen that line from you, Mike. It's one of your core lines when we talk to clients about things. And that is something important to us, long-term planning and not just always reactive crisis management. The minute you manage water that you are in a crisis, you pay double or triple the amount as if you would be planning it well in advance. And through adaptive planning, you actually, it will save, ultimately it will save money, 100%. But just laboring that point a little bit more, from our perspective, what we have seen, there is this huge challenge for politicians in particular. On the one hand, the water price has to be kept low because it adds to the cost of living. Cost of living is a topic in every single country around the globe at the moment. And how do you keep the water price as low as possible whilst there is this challenge of water scarcity? That is a huge balancing act and a challenge. And the only way around that challenge is good planning and be ready. But underinvestment long term is not an answer. As we all know, Mike, underinvestment only leads to huge investment going forward because not one city, and we had this in Australia, risks of running out of water. If you have a couple of million people in a city, it is an impossibility to run out of water. Businesses need certainty. Water restrictions in Australia, you can debate them. Obviously, there's a lot of science around it, how effective they were. They're very effective, but also they create uncertainty for business. That is not the answer. So they can only be a partial answer, how long people have their showers, how much water you can save. But thinking about the big water users, they are often in regional areas, there's farmers. So that's where we have to tackle those points and and make a priority investment into those areas.
Okay, and I guess I mean the ultimate goal is to make sure that the water industry is climate resilient. I'm just interested as to how much you think you could help achieve, and bear in mind what you've said, how much depends on the other stakeholders. I mean, obviously government sort of maybe sets the tone, and then there's all the way down, there's a lot of involved. So just what do you think you can help with, and what are you sort of to a certain extent reliant on, other people doing, which you can then contribute towards?
Well, I think, it's bringing that experience, Phil, is, I think, important. Yes, all those other parts have to be in place, but it's also talking about those experiences of what almost went wrong and how to avoid it. And the areas where we can help is providing some assurance about a process that either a water company or government need to go through, because we've lived it, we've assisted with it. And so, we use assurance a lot. We're not coming in to say we're going to design your plant, because we employ designers, but we design review and we provide assurance whether the designs are adequate, their innovation is thought through. This is just one area. And if it's innovation, is it proven? And we're agnostic to any particular technology if there's something proposed. So we can look at things with a commercial and risk lens, and that's, part of what we do. We've taken risks on in projects. So we believe we can add that sort of value to the municipal sector, let alone the industrial sector. And there's water requirements in industry. You only have to look at things like Sizewell C needs a 20 meg desal plant. They'll have water requirements. There's other industries needing significant water requirements in the future. And we've sort of straddled those municipal and industry sectors in Australia over many years. So I think we can bring that, and that is, I guess, a strength, we believe. Frank, do you want to add to?
Oh, totally. Look, from our experience, one of those challenges in water utilities is BAU. The business as usual is already often very challenging. There's a lot of things happening every day. And what we bring, and often the skill sets to deliver at the same time complex, large projects is tricky because the systems and processes are set up for BAU work. So when we come in, we bring that practitioner view. We have operators who have operated those plans. So we'll also understand whole of life costs really well. We bring in really that different thinking, that level of expertise that is normally not in existence any longer. And the reason being, we're not working in one particular state. So we work in Australia, in Queensland, as in New South Wales, as in Victoria. We always bring best practice, which is very hard unless you have a pipeline of so many projects, because that's what we do. We only manage those really complex projects, hand it over back to the water utilities, because that's what we do for a living. Different skill sets, so we bring that to the table. Plus, Mike, we have worked for multiple ministers across the country, providing assurance, guidance in really complex matters, including claims management, etc., so commercial matters. So in that regard, that's a very different perspective. When things go wrong, give really frank and simple, structured advice on how to deal with those complex situations. That is, again, a relatively unusual skill set. Not that many people around the globe would have had that level of experience.
Yeah, I think, Phil, what we see is with some engineering places, they do a lot of reports, are asked to do reports, which will often refer to another report to be done. We're very much an outcome-focused business. It's about providing best value for the client and being that critical friend. Often, we're generally client-sided. That's where we operate best to help government and water companies deliver what they have to deliver. And we work in the framework of what they want. It's not up us coming to dictate. It's us listening and then saying, okay, we understand that we could add some value in this area. And that's sort of what we're about. We're not about we can change the world or we're the best engineering house. It's not that. That is not the model. It's a far more integrated, we're the glue that helps the client deliver all the various subject matter services.
Yeah, and I mean, the conversation so far has mainly been around sort of water scarcity and climate resilience. Is that your major focus, or do you offer other services? I mean, I'm thinking, in the UK, we have dry summers and then we have these wet winters where we have a lot of flooding issues to deal with as well. So is that part of your remit? I mean, just give us a flavour. Is it everything in the water industry, or do you have particular sort of key focus areas?
Totally, Mike. Maybe I do a start and then you chip in. Look, one of those things which is totally important in the wider context is anything about assurance. We provide assurance to boards, to governments, government departments on projects, programs of work, but equally policy, pricing submissions. One of our strong points is as well transformation of water utilities. We've done a lot of work in transformation, reviewing all the cost base. We are water security experts and helping with water security projects, but of course we offer a much wider range of risk management services, digital transformation. We have environmental approval specialists. So we offer a lot more asset management, looking at aging assets, developing plans around that. Can you extend asset lives in a simpler way, rather than it's not just greenfield investments that we are looking at. So thanks for that question. And Mike, you might want to add a few things.
Yeah, no, I think brownfield designs, we get involved in fill areas where existing assets, as Frank alluded to, condition assessment needs to be done, and we have a part of our business is extremely strong in reviewing and modelling existing assets and getting the most out of them. Because what you want to avoid when you're a water corporation is building a whole new plant. If you can actually get more out of the plant you got, and whether that's sweating the asset, but it's certainly improving the asset, and that requires a lot of work to assess what the condition is, and we provide that service. And that service is very valuable to an owner who doesn't necessarily want to go and build a new plant or whatever it is elsewhere. your question around flood management, etc. I would not say we're experts at that in that area, the broader area. But one of the things we do is, our ability is to sit across when corporations have business as usual, people doing what they're doing, and they need extra project delivery management advice. That's where we add great value. That is the area of understanding risk and understanding the right time to make decisions. So that can be across a number of water areas. We tend to refer to, water resilience in the sense of assets that are new, but it really applies across a large part of the water sector.
Totally. Hey, maybe one last comment on this one. While you mentioned floods, there's an interesting project. For my understanding, is probably globally. There's only one project that has ever been looked at in serious detail. We did a feasibility study for government about artificial flooding. So now you're thinking, why on earth would you do that? Because the river system is obviously has less and less water in it, which means for some certain areas that got normally flooded over the centuries are not getting flooded any longer. So flood prone vegetation is not growing any longer. Bird life is not there any longer. So the impacts are massive. So we have done a very significant multi-year feasibility study for government about artificially flooding. So if you simultaneously let water go out of storages, what that would do to the Murray River, which is a very interesting project, a very interesting concept. It's still under consideration by government, as you can imagine, for risks and other commercial matters. But clearly we have other skill sets in the business that we can bring to the table.
It's a very good point. I forgot that. There's a few of those. And so actually that is relevant and very relevant. And you're right, it was over a number of years. Thanks, Phil.
No, and I guess back to the UK office, I think Darren Nabbs is the man who's going to be leading it. It'd just be good to understand, I guess, what you can share in terms of how many sort of personnel are going to be involved on day one, how you plan to build it up. And also you mentioned, I think earlier, you've got a sort of 200 strong team of specialists. So how will the UK office sort of access that expertise? Just how the UK office will operate, I suppose.
Yes. Frank, do you want to start or do you want?
Oh, you can. Happy for you to start.
Yeah. This is a great question. We've thought about this deeply, Phil. We start light in the sense we get Darren Nabbs setting up the office. He will be the point of contact. He's over 30 years experience, one of our gun program project delivery people who understands all the points that we've just talked about, who's been involved in business cases for water resilient assets and delivered them. So not just as an advisor, a practitioner, being a deliverer, a contractor delivering them. That's one of the skills that we should add. We're not just consultants, we're practitioners. And that means we've done the work, the hard work of building before. And that brings an extra level of understanding of risk, particularly if you've got profit risk on the line when you're a builder. So you bring that lens when you come up as a practitioner. Darren will have access to the people. One of the beauties of what certainly Australia's learned over many years is we accessed, when we wanted extra engineering resources in the past, resources from Southeast Asia and Asia. What we're doing here is providing expert advice from the UK, getting it out of Australia on our startup, which will be able to turn overnight the response. So that's coming with all the facets of whether it's engineering understanding, commercial, whether it's stakeholder and community experience, and bringing that through Darren back to the UK. So we do everything in real time, overnight in the UK as Australia's daylight. So we've thought through that. We're also got a plan to grow organically, and that plan, Frank can touch on, but we're also looking at acquisition opportunities to suit the nature and the culture of our business. Did you want to add to that, Frank?
Yeah, no, it's sort of essentially, Phil, a dual strategy, as Mike pointed out. Partnerships, acquisitions, you name it. Obviously, we are backed by private equity. There's a lot of experience in partnering with businesses and structuring it. The main thing for us, we never want to dilute our specific culture and mission to be the most trusted advisor for water utilities. And we want to be broader than your usual engineering service provider. We're not other. So that's why finding the right people is for us totally crucial with those experiences. So that's why we will set up a mix of secondments from Australia, supporting on projects, hiring people all at the same time. We have very ambitious plans, Phil, for the UK, because as I mentioned, it's a springboard. We are not intending to open up 20 offices around the globe. One is enough for us. And that will then get also Mike as the chair of the business and myself as a CEO, a lot of our attention and focus. So we personally are on a very regular basis also in the UK to assist our new clients over there.
Yeah, I think, Phil, one of the things the boutique business brings, and we're still considered boutique, is that you get access to all the senior people if you're a client. And we don't have the bureaucracy of some of the bigger businesses. We can provide agility. And some of these factors are very important to our clients in Australia, and we believe would be the same in the UK, would add value in that sense.
Yeah, and maybe just following on from that to finish, I mean, can you perhaps summarize, as we've talked, you've obviously highlighted a lot of things, but what do you think that you can bring to the UK water industry that's perhaps not available or a bit different from the existing sort of consultancy and wider services? Yeah, what do you think are your USPs, I guess, for the UK market?
Frank?
Look, I think we touched on the various points there. We bring proven practical experience. We are not just your technical, I shouldn't say just technical designer engineer. It's highly complex. I don't want to diminish the work that's happening in that space. But because the water space is so complex, we are really truly strategic partners in water security. We are a lot more in that space. We have our proven end-to-end model, which is also very, very different. Strategy, planning, approvals, governance, delivery, and operations, end-to-end, all dimensions of delivery in our view, and bring a very unique perspective and helping with getting social license for projects, really balancing engineering with community trust. You cannot deliver projects any longer when you run through them and deliver a project in a small community. You have to work with the community. You have to explain any environmental impacts, and you have to be down in the local community rather than doing this from a large capital city. That doesn't work any longer. So and our record of delivering those projects that are community backed. And often projects that have struggled in the past is second to none. So we bring something that is really different from our view anybody else, and it's international best practice. Mike?
Yeah, that's a really good point. We're not saying we're better than anyone else, Phil. The UK is full of very experienced people and firms, etc., but we're different. And that difference in Australia has allowed us to grow from 2 to 200 people in 5 years. That's recognized, and it's a tough market in Australia. And I know it's a tough market in the UK, but we have a different offering, and it's an integrated offering, and it's an offering that adapts to the client's needs. And it's not just an engineering or technical house. It's bringing many facets of the whole part of delivering any solution, water solution, to assist a client. And we bring the war wounds of decades of projects here. Those war wounds, we there's value in those, Phil, and we intend to bring some of those stories which will help with we think, with some decision making.
I mean, it's been fantastic to chat to you both, and thanks so much for sharing so many great insights into your thoughts, on some of the issues facing the water industry, obviously from your experience in Australia and in the UK. And it'd be great to see how it happened, and maybe we can touch base, I don't know, in 6 months' time, something, see how the UK office is progressing. But at least for now, Frank and Mike, so grateful for your time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Phil. It's been great joining you.